Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be talking about heavy cropping. So cropping really tight to visually impact your images. Well, you said we, right? So you and I. Let's say you talk about the pros and I talk about the cons. So before this guy tries to seduce you with the pros of heavy cropping, let's talk about a little bit about the cons of heavy cropping, right? Cons of heavy cropping. Are you ready? Loss of image quality and resolution. The more you crop, the more you're reducing the resolution. If you crop too much, the photo may not be useful for prints or large displays. You're going to notice noise, lack of detail, artifacts, especially in lower lit situations or with older cameras. Once you crop heavily, you have less to work with. Sharpening, noise reduction, color grading may introduce artifacts more easily because you're dealing with less data. Overcropping can sometimes lead to awkward compositions. You might lose context, which is very important, like the sense of environment or scale that helps you tell the story in sports. If you zoom too far in, the photo can feel cramped or disconnected from the action. Relying too much on cropping is going to make you less attentive to in-camera composition. You're going to get lazy about positioning or anticipating the action because you're going to tell yourself, I'll just crop later. This will also increase the amount of time you'll spend editing. Cropping heavily reduces the available data in the file, which can limit your ability to recover shadows or highlights or adjust colors precisely. Sports photography, where lighting conditions can be harsh, like stadium lights, backlighting, this can be a problem. Cropping changes the perception of depth of field. What felt like a shallow depth of field in the full image can look a lot more flattened after cropping. Plus, any minor focus issues might become more obvious because you're zooming in on them. And finally, some clients, especially editorial or news agencies, require full-frame images or have strict cropping guidelines. Overcropping can make an image non-compliant with submission standards. Heavily cropped images might be rejected if they don't meet the minimum resolution requirements for certain publications. Alright, so it's my turn to talk about the pros of heavy cropping. Are you ready? Heavy cropping lets you zero in on the key moment. You know, the athlete's expression, the intensity, the action. It helps eliminate distracting backgrounds or unnecessary elements that don't really add to the story. It can create a more intimate or dramatic feel, making the viewer feel right in the middle of the action. And you know, sometimes you just can't get close enough. Whether you're in the stands, behind barriers, or just covering a huge field. Cropping can bring you closer and turn an average photo into something much more dynamic. And you know, maybe the shot wasn't perfectly composed in the heat of the moment. It's sports photography after all. We're tracking fast-moving subjects. You know, cropping gives you a second chance to reframe creatively. You can also experiment with aspect ratios like going vertical for Instagram stories, for example. Sports photography isn't just about the action. You know, cropping lets you focus on emotional moments like joy and defeat. Can isolate an athlete's face or body language. These tighter emotional crops often resonate more on social media because they're personal and they're relatable. Heavy crops can sometimes create abstract compositions, close-ups of hands gripping equipment, the texture of a jersey, sweat or glass flying off an athlete. You know, these can be artistic and eye-catching, adding variety to your portfolio. if you can't afford a long, fast lens, maybe you have a decent camera with high megapixels. Cropping can simulate the reach of expensive glass, though obviously with some trade-offs. And this is helpful for newer photographers or those on a budget. Okay, so we talked about pros and cons of heavy cropping. Let's go look at some actual practical examples that I picked. Let's go into Lightroom and then you let me know and him know if it worked or not. Okay, so we're here in Lightroom and I picked some photos mostly from hurling and camogie. There's one from football, and it does make a difference the sport that it is, because some sports, in my opinion, allow you to crop in heavier. The reason I say this is because a lot of the action, a lot of the focus in hurling camogie is with the ball and the striking of the ball. So I would say some of it is waist up, right? So if you cut in a little bit from the waist down in some photos, not all obviously, it works out quite well. Whereas in, say, with football, the football is where? Near the feet, right? So if you cut off from the waist up, you're gonna miss the ball. Whereas with this type of sport, it works out quite well. So let's go into a few examples and then you tell me if it works or not. Okay, so the first one, as you can see, I'm just hitting R so you can see the crop. That's the original crop. So there's really not much I can do unless I just want to get in those details that I was talking about just now. You know, maybe some detail of the ball, adjust obviously the exposure, etc. But if you want to get in on the action, otherwise, to be honest, I think this was a pretty good crop in itself from the camera, so I can't complain. I actually like this crop quite a bit. Yes, I was hopeful that I'd get a little bit more of that player in the frame, but it is what it is, so we'll have to live with it. Okay, on this second example, the framing in itself, the original framing, is not too bad. I mean, if you follow the rule of thirds, it's almost there, right? But in this example, I would actually go in quite a bit. Maybe as so, like this. And that, no, maybe not like that. A little bit more breathing space on the left. Maybe like this. So this is where you need to be careful when you zoom in too much, because the ball is out of focus, which is fine because the eye of the athlete is tack sharp. So that's fine. But remember, the more you zoom in, the more out of focus areas will be evident. Let's move on to the next image. In this one, I have already leveled the horizon, which is something that both myself and my clone would agree with, is always level the horizon. No matter if you're cropping tight or not, just look at the billboard at the background or the grass or something. There's always going to be a line that you can guide yourself by to crop in. Okay, so I cropped in by the grass, and this is the original almost shot. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen this photo, and at the time, to maximize impact on Instagram, if you crop 4:5, that's how you'll maximize your real estate, so to speak. So I had it cropped like this. Okay, so I'm really getting in there. So this is how I had it cropped, and I really don't care about how many likes a picture gets, but this was one of the pictures that got the most likes this year that I took. To me, it's a cool picture, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's anything special. But there you go, photography, very subjective, isn't it? So this is how I cropped it originally. Now, does it lose a little bit of context? Yes, it does. There's another player there, but is that player important for the photo? I don't think it is, right? So I would have cropped, no matter what, really tight on this photo, just to maximize what I was trying to capture. I don't care about number 3 in this example. I care about the other 2 players going at it. Let's keep going. This is another one where you can see the horizon is not level. So if you want to level the horizon, please do. Don't make me cry. And then you know, it doesn't, there's way too much dead space on the left, right? Maybe that works. It's okay, really. But to me, it's all about the framing. It's almost like a frame within a frame, if you look at it there. Do you see that? They're framing each other. But obviously I have the post, so I'm gonna maybe do something like this. Maybe let's try 4x5, which is what I did for Instagram. So maybe something like this. Because to me, this is a frame within a frame. It's almost like they're doing this with the hurleys in the hands, like they're doing the square. All of the action is right there in the ball. The focus is nice and sharp. So this is how I would have cropped this image, just cropped to maximize that impact, visually speaking. Now this one is the exception of this set, because most of the photos I picked are hurling and camogie. This is obviously a football picture, even though you don't see the ball. You can tell it's a football picture. And what I like about this one is, even though there's no ball, you can sense the environment of the stadium, the smoke going up. Like there's a player there that you can't see because he's behind the smoke. Obviously, I would still crop in quite a bit, but not all the way. So I want the player to be, you know, in the frame, small, because it gives a sense of the whole environment of the stadium, etc. So I'd probably crop something like this, which is a wide crop. It's not going in too much, because in this case I think it's important to tell the story, to look at pretty much the whole thing, other than just going in all in on the player. Let's move on to the next one. Now this is absolutely terrible framing. I cut off both of these players' feet, and that's okay. You know, sometimes, like I said, you're tracking fast moving subjects. Everyone messes up. I mess up all of the time. So cropping will help me fix this. And to be honest, I would always crop in here just to maximize on the expression of the player. Go above the knee, because I don't like to cut, you know, limbs like halfway, like have part of the leg below the knee and above. No, just it's either above or all of it, to me at least anyway. Even though you can't really see the background, you can still see the posts from the goal, so try to use that to level the horizon as much as possible. That's how I would do it, and this is how I would crop this picture. All right, let's move on. Again, I wish I had this player, all of her, and not just part. So what am I gonna do? I'm probably gonna just level the horizon. I'm looking at the grass and the billboards behind that. Go in and probably crop something like this. So I'm trying to maximize as much as possible the space without showing the other player. The ref is completely out of focus, so I don't really care. So this is how I would crop. Maybe give it a little bit more dead space above the head. That's how I would crop this picture. Okay, let's move on. Again, there's just way too much going on that's distracting and completely irrelevant. So the important thing here, in my opinion, is the pass. So I would crop in really tight, really tight. Something like this, because it gives emphasis to what I was trying to capture, that pass, the handoff. Everything else completely irrelevant and is quite distracting, so just crop it off. Let's move on. Cropping wise, it's not too bad, because to me, cropping above the knee is okay. Just like I said on the previous picture, if you crop and there's part of the leg below the knee, that just visually speaking, it doesn't speak to me. So I would crop in just like this, maybe even go a little bit tighter, maybe like this, something like this. That's how I'd crop this picture, maybe a little bit more here. So not a crazy crop, but I would still go in, even though it's already tight, I'd go even tighter. This one, again, the framing is absolutely terrible, but we can fix that with a crop, can't we? Yes, we can. And maybe we don't need as much dead space here. Maybe we don't need all of the helmet, which is fine. She's out of focus anyway. And you can see there's a player, so you still leave that player there to give a sense of what's going on. But this tells a much better story than having all of that useless dead space in the original frame. Now this one, I wish I had the player in black and gold from Kilkenny. I wish I had her feet fully on the picture, which is a shame, but then I started looking at it, it's like, wow, that's a really good frame, modesty aside, because the detail of the expression of the cork player, Aisling Thompson, is phenomenal. She tried to hook this player and she missed, and her hurley goes flying, which you can see here. Now, this is one of the cons that I spoke about in the cons when I was just speaking, my clone was speaking, is that when you zoom in and there's out of focus areas in your photo, it's going to be even more noticeable, okay? Aisling Thompson, so the player in red is out of focus. The player in black and gold is in focus, so you can tell she's out of focus. So the more you zoom in, the more evident that will be. Regardless, I still think it's a really, really cool photo moment, because the player on the right, she's in pain because she got smacked with a hurley. The player in red lost the hurley in the process, and she's looking, she just happened to look in my direction, so the timing was just phenomenal. So you see the expression of pain, you see the other expression just looking at the camera, and it just works. Now again, could the original framing work if I had both players fully, so the feet of the black player? Sure, it would, but I don't think it would be as impactful as this, in my opinion, obviously. Now this one is already a quite tight crop, but you know what? Let's make it even tighter, because why not? We can do that. You can still sense that's a slitter about to be smacked, but if you crop really, really tight, you can see the concentration of that player just looking at the slitter. Again, be very careful. If your focus is not tack sharp, you're going to make it even more evident when you're cropping in. But in this case, I nailed, well, I didn't nail anything. The camera nailed focus on the eye. The slitter, which is the ball, is slightly out of focus, and that's okay, because what matters to me is the eyes. Another one where, sadly, you know, the framing is not the best. Again, there's this section here where I just wish it wasn't there. I either wanted to have both players fully, or I'm going to have to crop in. So what am I going to do? I'm going to have to crop in. So above the knee, try not to cut the player's hands, and then start going from here. The player in the background, the third player, don't really care, completely out of focus. Trying to use rule of thirds as much as possible. Maybe something like this. Can I still go a little bit lower? Just a tiny bit. Something like this, maybe. Not too happy, not too crazy about this picture. But yeah, I would have to crop it for sure to try to salvage it, so to speak. And then these two, the next two, are of the same sequence. I'm going to show you two different ways to crop this image, because they're basically the same, right? So one would be just crop normally, you know, look at the grass, it's quite level already, and go something like this. She's going to the left, so let's give more that space on the left, because that's the direction that she's moving towards. So something like this, maybe, for this picture, okay? It works. You can see the environment, you can see the players in the background, everything. And then on another one, let's go all in. It's pretty much the same photo, just a millisecond difference. So now you can see a lot more detail. You feel that you're in there, right? In the moment, in the action. So same picture, pretty much, but you see how they tell a different story. So cropping can make or break an image, in my opinion. So you need to be very careful, very thoughtful, and try different ratios to see which one works out the best. Again, you know, don't really care about the shoe showing up in there, so let's just go in. Let's focus on what I really care about, which is that concentration phase. Let's try not to cut the hurley in weird places. Maybe something like this. So shows the concentration, shows the slitter. Everything else is completely out of focus. Fabulous. And to wrap things up, probably one of the worst framings I've ever had in a photo. I don't know what I was doing, but I failed miserably. Can I still fix it? Yes, I can. Because if you saw this picture like this, and maybe I should have started with a crop, maybe you wouldn't know, okay? Just rewind and go here, and this is the first image that you see. It's like, okay, it's not too bad. Yes, there's some out of focus here because of the movement. She's quite fast striking that ball. And let's see, what was the shutter speed? 1600, so that's quite fast already, and still there's some blur. But let's not talk about blur. Let's talk about the framing itself. This is an acceptable framing, in my opinion. This is not. The original one is so bad, so bad. But this is where cropping can still salvage an image. So sometimes you just need to do it, not because you want to, but because you have to. So that's it. I hope you know, these examples have helped you guys understand that cropping for impact doesn't necessarily need to be really tight. It just needs to be able to help you tell the story you want to tell. So in summary, you know, this guy had some valid points. I did as well. Just use common sense and crop wisely. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and until next time, take it easy, guys. Stay safe.